everyone, and welcome. My name is Paige, and you are joining us today for a Deschutes Public Library virtual program. We have today an amazing cast of characters for you, all of whom contributed to this great anthology, Placed. This is an encyclopedia of Central Oregon. We will have our editors of this encyclopedia, Irene Cooper and Ellen Santasiero, who will be introducing contributors to made this great piece of work. I will go ahead and introduce Ellen and Irene. Without further ado, we have Ellen Santasiero and Irene Cooper. The only thing Ellen Santasiero likes better than making essays, memoirs, collages, plays, fictions, and safe spaces for learning is making them with others. Her work has appeared in the Stay Project, The Sun, and High Desert Journal, among others, and is forthcoming in 7x7. She teaches literature and writing at OSU Cascades. Check her out at ellensantasiero.com. Irene Cooper writes poems, reviews, essays, and fiction. She works and teaches in community in Central Oregon and co-edits The Stay Project. Committal, a speculative spy-fi novel about family, was published in 2020. Her debut full-length book of poetry, Spare Change, is forthcoming from Finishing Line Press in March 2021. Learn more at irenecooperwrites.com. All right, Ellen, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. We're thrilled to be here with 6 of our contributors to Placed. And over time, we hope that we get to have a reading with everybody who contributed. So I'm going to start off right away introducing our first reader, Bridget Lewis, because we only have an hour, so we want to get all of your questions and answers in. So Bridget Lewis is a writer born in gold country, destined for speculation. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming from Diagram, Hobart, the Southampton Review, the Bellingham Review, and more. Her chapbook, Origin Stories, comes out December 2020 from Iron Horse Review. Bridget.
Thank you, Ellen. I am happy to kick this delightful reading off with a piece from Placed called Pilot Butte. Pilot Butte is a lava dome that swells like a pregnant belly. In other words, a cinder cone. In other words, a volcano, maybe 6 months along. Pilot Butte is a lava dome that lifts upward from the town of Bend, Oregon, the back of a hand extending from town to sky, waiting for a kiss of genuflection. It sits at over 4,000 feet above sea level and rises 500 feet above its surroundings. It is high enough, but not too high. From below, it is a marker, a rounded reference point on the east side of Bend, east of the parkway, east of the river. From the top, you can see even further east, past Costco and Whole Foods, and homes laid out on grids, past ranchettes and small farms and the city airport, past the Badlands and beyond. If you wanted to, you could face north. You could walk to the other side of the butte and face south, then west. If you wanted to, you could trace a circle on the rim of Pilot Butte with your feet, or spiral up the path from bottom to top as if entering into a Fibonacci sequence. From this vantage point, at the top of Pilot Butte on its western side, you can see several peaks of the Cascade Range, peaks with names like South Sister, Broken Top, and Bachelor, peaks trimmed with snow in the middle of summer. Once, in winter, I unloose myself into the early morning dark with snowshoes strapped to my feet. It doesn't always snow in town, but this time it has. The butte is covered in soft washes of white that glow pink before dawn. Any sharp edges have wafted away. Sound is muffled alongside smell, taste. The metallic dust of the high desert scrubland steppe, pungent and molecular, is gone. Everything has turned to water. I pick up a handful of water and form it into a ball. I let the ball be flung from my hand only to watch it break against a juniper trunk. I throw another and then I keep walking. I reach the top before sunrise and watch as, yet again, a town is born into light. Some people try to walk the butte every day. Some people have walked it over 100 times. Some people sprint the mile to the top, an annual foot race put on by a local running club. It is no small thing to one moment be amidst the sage and bitter brush, and the next be above them as if on a perch or in a high nest. What are we made of if not this eagle-eye view? Once upon a time, 4th of July fireworks were launched over Mirror Pond in Bend. Nowadays, they are shot from the top of Pilot Butte, year after year setting off fire after fire, below the peonies or chrysanthemums, willows or diadems sparking up the sky. The fire department is always on hand and the fires are always put out quickly. Still, what does this say? To bring a flame into a tinderbox, knowing there will be consequences.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Bridget. So to the attendees and to the panelists, the other panelists, if you have questions, reactions, anything, go ahead and put them in the Q&A or the chat box, depending. Okay, our next reader is Robin Loxley. Robin is a veteran of the United States Army Reserve, mother to a large blended family, Oregon State University graduate, and mental health therapist located in Prineville. In her free time, Robin enjoys reading, rockhounding, taking photos, and spending time outdoors with family and animals. Robin.
Thank you, Ellen. Prineville and Prine, Tucky, Main Street and Highway 126. Back the Blue and Black Lives Matter. I am angry and I am angry. Terrorists and peaceful protests. Militias and terrorists. Go back home and I live here. Hashtag MAGA, hashtag ACAB. We don't need this and you need this. I am scared and I am scared. It isn't a problem and you are the problem. All lives matter and no justice, no peace. I don't understand and I don't understand. Raising flags and destroying flags, nooses hanging and fingers flying. I feel threatened and I feel threatened. Save our children and these children. This isn't Bend and this isn't Bend. God wouldn't approve and God wouldn't approve. Thou shalt love thy neighbor and love is love. Communist and fascists. I want better and I want better. Karens and snowflakes. Americans and Americans. Manassas and Bull Run. We the people and power to the people. Trust no one and trust no one. I want safety and I want safety. CC strong and redneck pride. Hardworking, salt of the earth and uneducated. See me, hear me, and see me, hear me. White savior complex and white guilt. 0.8% of the community and still relevant. Jedi and take a knee. This isn't Portland and this is a hick town. It's an election year and it's an election year. Misrepresentation and more representation. 3%ers and the 99%. George Soros and George Floyd. Kyle Rittenhouse and Michael Forrest Ringholt. First responders are family and defund the police. We want peace and we want change. They don't get rural Oregon and Kate Brown. Families first, and my family doesn't feel safe. We have to teach them right, and I'm afraid to go to school. They are hardworking folks, and they could deport my family, build walls, and tear it down. Us and them and us. Generational trauma, poverty, substance abuse, and generational trauma, poverty, and substance abuse. I hurt, and I hurt. There's history here, and there's a future here. Don't tread on me, and we are all in this together. Freedom and safety, Proud Boys and Antifa, ego and ego. You don't speak for me, and you don't speak for me. Yelling and yelling. Proud to be from here, and ashamed to be from there. My home and my home. Vote for my white man, and vote for my white man. 2020 and 2020. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Beautifully read. Thank you. So for those of you who don't have the book, I just want to point out really quickly, Robin's piece is formatted on the page. She might be able to talk about that later, but she formatted it to look like the main street in Prineville. And the word and repeats and repeats sort of as the center of the road, and then the two different protesters groups on either side of the road. So, so the graphics speak for the theme. Okay, our third reader is Kathy Lawrence. Kathy is a therapist living in Portland. She spent one dog year in Central Oregon and loves the marmots, wildflower meadows, and green waters. She has led writing groups with the Deschutes Public Library and right around Portland. Kathy.
Thanks, Ellen. Mine's under Whistle Pig, under W, if you have the book. Whistle Pig, yellow-bellied marmot, Marmota flaviventris. Marmot, noun, any bushy-tailed stocky rodent of the genus Marmota, derivative of marmotter, meaning to mutter, murmur, colloquially called rockchuck or whistle pig. Spend approximately 80% of their lives underground, often hibernating from August to March. Found on slopes with a mix of rock and grass throughout Central Oregon, including the V-shaped area surrounding the Bushy Bend sign between Highway 20 and Division Street, in the Old Mill District, in the sports fields at Bend and Mountain View high schools, and in the rocky cliffs across the Deschutes River from Farewell Bend Park. On snowy days, driving by Mountain View's playing fields, I think of the hibernating rockchucks. They are deep in their winter burrows, hidden among the snow-covered rocks. I wonder if they have soft bedding in their burrows. Do they shape nests from neighborhood flora, tall grasses of fescue, fuzzy blooms of Russian sage, petals of lupin? Do they forage thyme for scent? Or do they sleep on hardened dirt with their thick fur providing softness? Are they curled around themselves or sprawled out, belly up, legs splayed? I envy their hibernation, the stillness, its depth. What must it be like to wake, to rise after months underneath? In March, I saw one at the entry of its burrow, snow still covering the ground. It looked dazed, its fur matted and greasy, but it sniffed the air as if inhaling everything. The barely emerged shoots of grass, the mud, the snow. How is hunger when it rises? Is there memory? Imagining the rockchucks deep in rest has saved me. I need the sweetness. I need to know as we burn our world, somewhere nearby, sage grouse dance only for each other. Somewhere fawns are hidden in wildflowers. Somewhere a rockchuck is rising, not directed by thought, but by the primitive urges, the primitive knowing of its body. It is not just sweetness I need. I know in the fall, elk will rut to the point of injury, even death. I know the crow in my yard is scavenging the nests of the scrub jays and squirrels for soft pink bodies. I hear the protests of the parents, see the jays' aerial dives. I know the raccoons will eat the tadpoles in my small pond before even their legs emerge. This gives me comfort. Our greed, short-sightedness, destruction, lust, we are not so different. We act on primitive urges, to our detriment, to the world's detriment. We hold lofty our frontal lobe, our ability to have forethought, to understand consequences. Yet our actions often come from the body, the nerves, feelings of longing and belonging, more driving, more urgent than common sense. When I watch hummingbirds, nests of spider silk, fiercely claim a flower patch, chasing and knocking each other to the ground, driving competitors out of the yard despite countless blooms, I recognize we are a part of things. Our struggles are not just human, but the struggles of being alive. What is mine? Is there enough? How will I eat and feed my babies? Where will I shelter? I feel a softness there, a kinship, love. And then I want to protect it all, make room for everything. Love, a more workable, actionable place than guilt, disgust, shame. In summer, when I see the rock chucks scanning the deep green playing fields, waiting for the teams to leave so they can eat and get fat on the abundant grasses, I know there is enough. There is enough. There can be enough.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. All right, Irene, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Kathy and Robin and Bridget. I'm going to introduce Beth Alvarado. Beth Alvarado is the author of Anxious Attachments, winner of the 2020 Oregon Book Award for Creative Nonfiction, and Jillian in the Borderlands, a cycle of rather dark tales, and 2 earlier books. She migrated from Tucson, Arizona to the high desert of Bend, Oregon in 2016.
This is under U. It's Eulali noun, Chinook Wawa word for berry or huckleberry. Tumalo Falls. The 3rd time I went out to Tumalo Falls, I walked almost all the way down to the pool where the water crashes into Tumalo Creek. The steep path was narrow and it made me nervous. It was overgrown with sage, slick with spray, sometimes gravelly or muddy, and there were large volcanic boulders that I imagined a body, head attached of course, would hit on its long tumble down to the creek below. Mostly I was nervous because my 7-year-old and 10-year-old grandsons were also on the path, and they seemed oblivious to any danger. We were all headed to the base of the falls because my daughter was going to get married beneath them. Only she and her partner, their dog, and the minister walked all the way down to where the water thundered. The noise was tremendous. I'm sure they chose the falls so they could say their vows in private. Hikers who were heading out stopped other hikers who were heading in, asking them to wait the 10 minutes or so for the ceremony to take place, which they kindly did. The falls are just 14 miles west of Bend, Oregon, after all, where bumper stickers say, "Be nice, you're in Bend." The rest of the wedding party perched precariously above the falls, the mist rising, the sunshine falling, and took pictures with cell phones, except for me. I didn't take pictures. I watched the children. 10 minutes is a long time for boys to stand still and not throw rocks into a ravine. According to one source, it is thought that the name Tumalo comes from the Klamath Indian word temolo, meaning wild plum. Or it might mean ground fog from Temola, or icy waters from Tumawala. The geographical historian Lewis A. MacArthur wrote, any of the above explanations might fit the facts. So there you are. For a short while in the late 1880s, the falls were called Laidlaw Falls, after W.A. Laidlaw, who, along with the Carey Act, encouraged white settlers to reclaim these arid lands and promised them irrigation so they could do so. Like the falls, the town of Tumalo was for a time named Laidlaw. But when the irrigation project failed, the falls and the town were renamed, and Laidlaw was hung in effigy. The falls are within the traditional territory of the Molalla tribes, who traded with the Chinooks to the north, the Klamaths to the south, the Paiutes to the east, and the Kalapuyans in the west. A linguistic map suggests the Molallas occupied the Cascades and parts of the Deschutes Basin. Although their origin stories locate their creation at the base of Mount Hood, they had small winter villages near Oregon City and Salem, and at the base of Mount Jefferson. In warmer weather, they left their homes to hunt and gather and trade throughout the Willamette Valley as well as throughout the Cascades. They must have had sacred places. When Coyote created them, he foretold that they would be good men and good hunters, that they would think all the time they are on a hunt. By 1856, the Molalla had signed 2 treaties, after which most were removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation with many of the other tribes. The state of Oregon has a long history of forced removal of tribes to reservations. One such removal was known as the Umpqua Trail of Tears. None of the treaties were honored. Now, according to the website for Oregon State Parks and Recreation, Tumalo Falls location makes it an ideal stepping stone for any type of outdoor activity you could possibly dream of. And of course, for weddings. The bride wore a short white sheath and flip-flops. The groom Bermuda shorts and a white button-down shirt. Their smiles were luminous. That's the end. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I will, if Irene is not back, I'll take on the rest of the introductions. Okay.
Thank you, Ellen.
Sure. So let's see, I have to go back and check who's next. Randy, right? Okay. Randy Workman. Mr. Workman is a writer. His articles, essays, and poetry have appeared in the Seattle Times, Los Angeles Daily News Sunday Magazine, and in 433, a daily magazine of art, literature, and politics. Randy.
Hello, my piece is titled Rivering, and you can find it under Day Trips. It's high time we use river as a verb. I'm going to river today, meaning one can engage in some activity around the flowing body of water. What's on your agenda today? Just some rivering this afternoon? This could mean kayaking, tubing, paddleboarding, board surfing, hiking, or just picnicking by the river. I rivered to Dillon Falls the first week of August 2020. This was my first visit to Dillon Falls, a beautiful metallic photograph capturing a copse of quaking aspens taken at Dillon Falls was my initial awareness of the area. I was eager to see the falls. I'm not an outdoors person. I'm more of a flaneur who naively went to Dillon Falls expecting to see a modest waterfall flowing over a cliff. I won't be fooled again. Its name is a bit of a misnomer. The falls were named after Leander Dillon, a nearby homesteader who died in 1907. Why him and not another settler? I didn't find an answer. To be clear, there is no waterfall. Dillon Falls is one relatively small but thrilling portion of the Deschutes River. The Dillon Falls area is a sonorous and present Class 5 whitewater rapids section. For context regarding rapids, there are 6 levels of classification for rapids. The International Rating System classifies rapids as follows: Class A, lake water; Class 1, easy; Class 2, moderate; Class 3, moderately difficult; Class 4, difficult; Class 5, extremely difficult; and Class 6, extraordinarily difficult. I contently followed the easily marked paths. Walkers and bikers share the trail and then diverge with large Forest Service constructed steps leading toward a narrower biker or hiker's trail. The bike trail that I innocently followed, walking downstream in my search of a waterfall, is wider and a bit further away from the water. The hiker's trail that I followed on my return trip is closer to the water and has areas that are shady and tropical looking. At one point, Picturesque cliffs along and above the walking path are blanketed with moss and fallen pine needles, providing a more mystic and magical backdrop. Tire tracks were visible on the hiking trail, as were shoe prints on the biking path. Anyone I encountered was friendly and courteous. During the week, before noon, it was not crowded. As I was leaving around lunchtime, more cars were heading in. And before going to the river, a parking pass is required, and they're not available there at the spot.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy. I've never actually been to Dillon Falls. I've lived here a really long time. That's embarrassing to admit. Alex Borgen is an interdisciplinary artist interested in fieldwork, importance of transitional and liminal spaces, conceptual, physical, and temporal, and the ways in which we become the terrain that sustains us. Each of her art projects results in a coinciding manuscript. Borgen has shown nationally and internationally and holds an MFA in interdisciplinary book and paper arts from Columbia College, Chicago. See more stuff at www.alexborgen.com. Live from Minnesota.
Thanks, Irene. Maybe you should read my poems. You made that sound like poetry. All right, I have two short poems. The first one is under E for ear. Sonos. I capture sounds for future use. Rubber on various forms of gravel, dust, sand, and dirt. Mountains singing in the sun, rain, stars, insects of calling varieties. Metal spoons softly scraping on titanium mugs. Conversations of two cyclists, debriefing or planning the days. Wailing of pain, whispers of ghosts. Grasses in the wind. Pine needles crunching, dripping sap, metal on metal, water in various forms. River rocks. Splashing of river crossings, ocean waves. Wind caught in fabric, skin on skin. Typing an email home. Gasps of fright, static electricity, thunder in many forms, shotguns, pounding pavement, footsteps at various speeds, hum of air conditioners, horizons. Okay. And then the second, thank you, is called Open Range Loose Stock and is under R for range. 1. Loose stock in an open range, sagebrush, tall grass, we move on gravel roads along a rolling horizon, where content livestock graze, sheep, cows, bisons, goats. Cottonwood ryegrass, Wheeler 207, County, Green River, Tawny, running. And herds, deer, antelope, elk, gravel tans and dusty dry grass, high desert subtle cracks of life, ochre green, yellow, dark brown, and blue, juniper, ivory yellow patches, and bone. 2. A calm, desolate longing here, the ghosts of erased histories and nomadic, listless solitude. At the center of town, a diner. I know places like this from my childhood, small towns in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Oklahoma. Weak coffee, the color of the river. Gravel roads extend from the diner in a star point pattern to ranchland, wilderness. Those born here young sit at the diner counter ordering greasy hash browns and eggs. Those going to die here clutch their pen, crossword in one hand, bottomless coffee mug in the other, and those absent. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Lovely.
This opportunity, pardon me, is so great. And we did another reading at Roundabout Books, and one of the joys of pulling this together was that, some people who read, Kathy's in Portland and was in Bend, sitting at our Friday writing table when she could, as was Alex, in between school and other obligations. And even when people become more far flung, it was it was just a joy to receive what they wanted to give to this project. And we left those boundaries really loose as we talk a little bit about in the book, that form was something somebody could decide for themselves. Content was something somebody could decide for themselves.
Yeah, so I'm noticing there's a question in the Q&A, and this is perfect. If it's all right with you, Paige and Irene, you want to just segue into having the panelists address this question? Sound all right?
That sounds great. Take it away, Ellen.
Okay, so for all the readers, one of our listeners, Dana, is curious to hear how you chose to write about what you did and why you see it as central to the Central Oregon experience. So why don't we just start at the top with Bridget?
Sure. I think that I came to this project a little bit later than everyone else, and I just remember chatting about it with Irene and asking her if anyone had selected Pilot Butte to write about. To me, having lived here for maybe 5 years and not being accustomed to the volcanic landscape, it just really is a center point of Bend, certainly. And then, Bend is a big part of the Central Oregon community. So it needed to be acknowledged. So I just wanted to give it its due.
Okay, great. And then just popcorn style, whoever's ready next to speak. Robin, great.
So why this was central to me and to Central Oregon is that geographically, Prineville sits about 25 miles southwest of the geographic center of the state. And over the long, hot summer of 2020, we had multiple protests within Prineville, right in the middle of what you would call downtown. That's why I decided to orient my writing the way that I did, was to kind of illustrate the two different sides, but then this thoroughfare of everyone else kind of traveling in between. A lot of aggression, hostility, but just unrest. And that was important and central to my writing this piece because it's not something that Prineville is known for. And it received the attention of not only the nation from being retweeted and identified by Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, social media, but also within just the local news, and representing that this is a place where a lot of big things could possibly happen, and as uneasy and disturbing as some things were going on during the summertime, it felt like an immense promise of change and growth. And that felt incredibly hopeful for me, having lived in Central Oregon and Prineville for almost 12 years now.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Who else has an answer at the ready?
I have an answer. I have an answer for Tumalo Falls, although I maybe am pronouncing it incorrectly. But I chose it because as someone who came here from Arizona, in Arizona, I was very much aware of the Indian tribes, the Native American tribes. There are 26 in the state of Arizona, but I wasn't sure about here. So I wanted to pick a place outside of Bend where I was sure there's water, it's beautiful, that people must have been living for a long time. And then I wanted to look into the history of that place, that the history of the people of that place, the people that are no longer there. And then the other one that I wrote was about the roundabouts. So that was one of the first things I noticed about Bend, was all the roundabouts. So I wanted to write about something I couldn't see and something that I could see. So those were the two I picked.
Great, thanks, Beth. Alex.
I'm going to follow up based on Beth, because I too have a lot of questions about those we don't acknowledge on the land that we're on. And so I don't know if it came out in my poems, but I tried like the ghosts of these people who are still there, who should be acknowledged, who aren't, and then how it contrasts with like all these things that I'm experiencing as a recreationist. Because I do a lot of research fieldwork / fun by bike packing and backpacking and just spending lots of time outside and exploring the world around me. And so that in itself is inspiration for what I'm writing, but then I'm also questioning how people are connecting with the land and how the land informs them and how they inform their land as well. And so, yeah, I hope that kind of comes through.
Yeah, Irene.
I think, that brings up a good point of layering, which has to do with the form of this book. I mean, that's what, we couldn't have anticipated really what we would get and how it would come together, but there was a definite impetus toward, getting beneath the surface of how Ben is seen, which is largely recreational, or sort of a new community for people who telecommute, or all of these things that sort of hit the headlines. And I think that segs really interestingly into our cover design, which was developed, and the artistry belongs to Bridget Lewis, who we're lucky to have here with us today to talk about this. But this idea of a geologic perspective on layers of compressed and invisible things that are going on in this landscape, in this area, which I hope speaks to the cover, because we've had these discussions, but not publicly.
Great. Randy, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. When I was asked about this, I picked Dillon Falls because I had this photograph, a metallic photograph of it, and I definitely wanted to see it. And it's only 7 miles from downtown Bend, so it made it just very convenient. And then the pandemic hit, and Irene said, "Are you still interested in writing?" And it's like, "Oh yeah." So I went right out to the falls and walked the trails and came back and wrote a piece. I had taken some photographs as well. It's just a beautiful area, and it's very whitewatery for that section. And then there's above it is kind of lake-like, and below it is a little bit lake-like. So it's just a rough section of falls, and it's a beautiful area to be walking around.
Great, thank you. Another question is, this is for Irene and myself, from Carol Barrett. Curious whether the encyclopedia format was part of the initial plan or if it emerged as submissions were received. Irene, would you like to address that?
Yeah, no, that existed from the gate, and in a way that we wanted to have a little fun with it. So when Kim Stafford came, when he was Oregon Poet Laureate, and he was making the rounds through Oregon, he came to Bend and gave some workshops at particular one at the East Side Deschutes Public Library. And, we sort of laugh about this a little bit. It's easy to do something that Kim Stafford asks you to do. And he came with that sort of request to that, to probably a group of 25 or 30 people in the room, because he was promoting the idea of, a regional body of work. And the example that he showed was they were beautiful and very homespun and sort of very landscape, and from the perspective of what you see when you look out into the field or the window. Very much, here's what I see in Central Oregon. So we like the idea. He used the word encyclopedia, and we did like that idea, but we eventually kind of are onto a way where we would take that sort of academic stance toward this is something, and here's sort of here's a sort of what do I want to say, like research style annotation, and then have people do whatever they want. And then Ellen and I both decided that we would also, give a letter to the piece that maybe was not quite linear or did not quite make perfect sense or made sense to us. Or made us laugh, or made us think about something, or made us vector in some way. Yeah, Ellen, you could speak to that.
No, just not quite expected is all I was going to say. Unexpected sort of letters paired with pieces. But
yeah, but I think it was just an attempt to, we like the idea of Encyclopedia as a form, and then, we wanted to upend it a little bit to have some fun.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Well, I can't figure out how to write a question, but I do have a question for Irene and Ellen, and that is, how did you figure out the arrangement? I mean, the fact that it's not, that the letters aren't obviously a guide to find the piece. How did you decide on arrangement?
You mean
one piece after another? It seems to me like there's some kind of associative. I mean, did you mean for people to read it from front to back? And why does one piece go after another? I mean, I'm just kind of curious about those.
No, that is a really wonderful question. And I think, I don't think as we were putting it together, we had definite ideas about shape in general. We had enormous faith that the collection of stuff we would receive would be a guide for us. So, rather than have this heavy editorial hand, we just knew we were going to be handed things that once we laid it in front of us would start to talk to one another, which is how we ordered the pieces. Is like what not necessarily was speaking directly, but we looked at length, we looked at subject matter, we tried not to clump things together. And then, this business is what we were after, sure, front to back, but also inside out, 2/3 through the middle, whatever. I mean, that's the idea of being able to pick something up and find something new, or to reread a piece, and to not have sort of, to not have everything make too much sense, to have there be a little friction, and also a lot of music. We thought we were very pleased with how much harmony and movement and composition there was through these pieces. Yeah, I know we have 37 contributors. I can't remember how many pieces we have.
I think 42 or something like that. Speaking to that faith bit, I think that Irene and I share the same tolerance for risk, at least for this project. So we just knew that, it's going to work. It's going to come together, and, there are unseen forces, right, going on behind us. I think Wordsworth said that, something like that. Okay. Alex, comment.
I just wanted to say, because right before I left Bend, you had just asked for submissions, or it was kind of early on. And I sat down at one point separately with Ellen and Irene, just as like going away, like conversations. And I remember that this came up in a brief way, and you're just like, we have faith it's going to work out, and it's going to get shuffled around, and we're going to have the right, the right combination of stuff. And I'm just like, so pleased that worked out, and just the surprise with what you're talking about with the encyclopedic word, and then the piece itself and the conceptual kind of scatter. It's lovely, and I'm thrilled. So I just wanted to add that.
Good. I'm glad it worked. Having faith might be just another way of saying that we don't have any standards, but
no, and we have no standards and deep editorial prowess. So all of it.
Right, take your pick. Okay, there's a question from Isaac. Isaac, you've been waiting a long time. Thank you for us to address your question. Do the writers find it easier to write about a place as someone who knows it well, or as someone new to it? Let's see. How about Robin? Would you be willing to talk about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That question brings up a lot of stuff for me, why it felt important to write what I did. I know that part of it felt as though, I've lived in Oregon my whole life. I've lived in Prineville for over a decade now. And so I feel like I know it fairly well, but there's so much about this place I don't know. And what was going on over the past year was so unknown. And it felt so important, and it couldn't be ignored. You literally could not ignore what was going on in our small town. And sitting in an office, holding quiet, therapeutic space for clients to collect their stories and hold space for them as they process what they're surrounded in, the water that they're swimming in. You could hear at times the yelling, the chanting, the horn honking, the cussing. And I felt, to place a marker in time, this was my opportunity. And it was so unknown in some ways and so fraught with excitement as well as anxiety that I wanted to put a pin in it. And this was the perfect project to do that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Hey, I just realized, Kathy, I didn't mean to skip you on the last question. So if you would like to weigh in on both of the questions, go for it.
Thanks, Ellen. Well, the first question, and it goes with the second question too. I think one of the things that was sweet to me are the marmots of Central Oregon. I think they're unique to that area, and they just pop up in the spring. So for me, it was always a seasonal thing of the marmots are up, and then when they disappear, like winter is here. And just some fascination that while we're shoveling our driveways and wearing parkas and ski pants and long underwear, they're like underground, just hanging out, sleeping. That is always just such a unique and amazing thing. So I think I spent every year noticing them and just enjoying how they marked the seasons. And so it was with familiarity that I wrote about them, but also something that really stood out when I was new to Bend. They're just unique.
Thank you. Thanks.
Kathy, did you know that, well, I read this, I don't know that it's true, that they actually dig 2 separate homes? They have a winter and a summer home.
I did.
Isn't that?
And I wonder what are the differences between.
What's the difference? Exactly.
My thought in the summer, and I think the summer's higher up, but I wonder, what's in the summer home. So cool.
Summer home's probably on a lake or something, right? Okay, Randy, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to answer part of Isaac's question too. As a newbie to Bend from Prescott, Arizona, that I love the area. And like I said, the reason I found out about Dillon Falls was because I had gone to a local art gallery and found this picture. And that's what intrigued me to write about it.
Thank you. Thanks. How about you, Alex?
Well, I think I wouldn't say one is easier than the other. For me, it's just different. I think that maybe coming to writing about a place you've just met or experienced ends up being different than something writing about a place that you've known for a really long time. And I have experience writing about place both that I know and new. So yeah, I don't know, that's a tough question, but I would say for me, it just ends up being different. The feeling feels different. And the questions I ask myself end up being different.
Mm-hmm. How about Bridget and then Beth?
That's perfect timing, because I want to echo what Alex says in that neither is easier. They're both just different. And I tend to be drawn in my writing by like points of curiosity, and usually my pieces of writing will include at least one, probably closer to 10 rhetorical questions. And I think there were 2 in that piece, but sometimes when I'm writing about a place that I know better, I might not start with as many questions, but I will get to the questions because, and as I'd like to echo what Robin said too, like we always have something to learn even about our own backyard. And not to put words in your mouth, that's not, there were other circumstances at play, but yeah, I hope that elucidates the point a little bit, just different, but equally as fruitful in following the curiosities and questions.
Got it, thanks. Beth?
Well, I have the same difficulty answering this question. I think the questions that you have about a place are just different if you're new to that place or if you've been there for a long time. But And they should come to you, I guess, while you're writing. I do believe that writing should be driven by questions more than by answers. So any kind of writing.
And there's context too, right? I mean, how you come and why you come, I think are always going to influence. I think Robin's piece demonstrates we can have a sort of historical viewpoint of Prineville and what that means to Central Oregon, and and the sort of rural quality and what it looks like. And then there's phenomenon, right? There's the phenomenon of this summer that is social and people driven, and not so much geographically driven. I know one of the pieces that I wrote has everything to do with moving here, pregnant with my first and eldest child. I saw everything through the lens of small kids for more than a decade, still kind of now. And that was what was interesting to receive these pieces as well, to see what context people brought with them, flora, fauna, social interaction, history. We expected to get a lot of nostalgia pieces, which we did not get, which I find interesting in itself. There's a tendency, I think, in these types of works to think about the way back, or back in the day, or, that used to be, especially in Bend, which underwent sort of this cataclysmic growth spurt before 2008, and then had this pause. It's very segmented into these different times for people. And yet, I find, you could speak to this, Ellen, too. I find people wrote very intimately of their own experience with, in a contemporary context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All the pieces that were read today, I noticed, the intimacy woven in with, fact, with nonfiction. I know Alex's is poetry, but based on, her sensory experience of the place. I'm noticing that we have 4 minutes, and I want to give Bridget some time to talk about the cover. Irene, did you have a specific thing that you wanted her to talk to?
A little bit about process. So here's what I want to say. Oh, I'm muting myself. So here's what I want to ask about that, Bridget, is, and I will say that Bridget has been the artist for both Committal, my novel, and for Spare Change. So I was definitely going to the well when I suggested to Ellen that we ask Bridget to help us out with this. But here's why. Because I'll say, Bridget, I have this idea. And then she does something fabulously gorgeous. So if you would talk a little bit about how you arrived at this cover, that would be delightful.
Sure. I just want to say that at the rate that you are writing books, I am happy to be your sole book designer for the rest of our lives. That will be my number one job. So approaching the cover, I wanted to invoke a sense of place. I don't know that it was called Placed at that point, but just being an encyclopedia of place, I had that information. But I didn't want it to be too obvious, and hopefully I achieved that. But I was kind of going for a contour map-esque kind of look. And what I started with, I'm often drawn by color. And so I started with a lot of colors that are found. Oh, look at everyone holding the books up. Colors that are found here. That bright aqua is taken directly from a picture of Devil's Lake. The blue is, what a mountain might look like, an early morning light. The yellow is rabbit brush. The red, I think, is red cinder, red lava. The dark that might look like black is actually a really dark green. That's sort of the old man's beard moss. And so I wanted to pick different bright colors. And then I interlaced them with patterns that you probably haven't even noticed unless you look very closely. And just patterns that sort of also speak to place in the same way that color did, kind of loosely. I don't even know if I remember all the patterns, but one of them was ski tracks. Another would be, I went to Google Maps and found all of the beautiful agricultural plot lines from a section of Madras. So it just shows it, the circles and the quadrants, and that's in one of these. I think another is the little windows at D. Wright Observatory, if you've ever been up there looking at the mountains. And so just some, random place-based textures and colors, and wove them together, and then attempted to create an overall vision of a contour map without being any of those things. So it was very process driven. And then this is what came out.
Texture was the word I would have used when we were having our initial conversations about art, and I didn't use it. So I'm really very, very happy that you made that a central focus. Yeah. Plus color. Color seems to be a thing we struggle with a little bit here in Central Oregon. Color in being, well, we're very sagey.
And that's there. It couldn't be ignored.
It is, and sage is wonderful, and it's it's interesting. The high desert, exactly, but the idea, but of course, anyone who's gone on a wildflower tour or just gotten low enough to the ground knows how much color there is in the area and how much life.
And very much in the waterways. They're just beautiful colors of water in all of Oregon, but in Central Oregon.
Thank you, Bridget.
Back to you, Paige.
Well, I would like to say thank you so much to everyone who was here today, our panelists and our attendees and our editors. This is just a fantastic work, and I know that there's so much work that went into it behind the scenes, so it's really great to get to have that intimate conversation about what all this took. So Placed, an Encyclopedia of Central Oregon, is available at your Deschutes Public Library and also at local bookstores across Central Oregon. We have it at Dudley's and Roundabout and the Bend store, as well as in Paulina Springs and elsewhere. So check it out and go get your own copy. I know that you'll want to see all of the other amazing entries in this great work. And we would just like to say thank you again for joining us for all of our great programming. We have a lot of programming available at our YouTube page. We have a whole bunch of fun, free programs for everyone in your family. Check us out at DeschutesLibrary.org and see what else is coming up next. Thank you so much. We hope to see you next time. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.